This story is about how an earthquake in Christchurch, that's in New Zealand, brings a pro-life message to us. And it's a very strange story. There's a twist in the story, a couple of twists. And the story entails not just one, not just two, but 3 people were saved in this story from certain death. So a little miracle here, and this is to inspire all of us to keep praying for the unborn. So do join us in this talk. Hello friends, and on this channel, Great Saints, we seek out inspiration from Padre Pio and beyond to other great saints. And today we're going to be having a look at a story in particular aligned with the culture of life philosophies of Pope John Paul II, known as St. John Paul II. So do join us in this apostolate. It'll be great to have you on board. And as St. Francis of Assisi used to say, may the Lord give you his peace. Now, for the regular followers of this channel, you may have wondered, things have been a little quiet recently. What's going on? Well, Providence, destined, designed, and I was very blessed to be able to attend the most important pro-life and pro-family event of the New Zealand year. And it was held by Family Life International. And in this ambience, this atmosphere, I came across the following story. Now, we all know of this earthquake that took place in 2011, a massive 6.7 on the Richter scale, which in fact brought the city of Christchurch to its very knees. Entire suburbs were flattened and people lost everything. It was truly a devastating tragedy. And it always fascinates me how in the midst of all of this, buildings collapsing all around, but there are certain individuals who enjoy a protection, we could say, as if they are right in the palm of his hand, of God's hand. And of course, all of this is linked through prayer. Very interesting story. The main character in this story, let us assume the name of Gillian, or Jill for short. But it is written, in fact, by a medical doctor. It appeared in the Marist Messenger, which is their newsletter, and this is September 2011. You can look up the story there. And it begins. Gillian and her husband Frank, they were already the parents of 2 lovely children. The eldest was not quite sweet 16 yet. Her name was Shirley, and Joel was not many years her junior. And the family, in fact, enjoyed a good life. They'd taken over running the family farm, and I bet they were pretty comfortably off. At the age of 41, Jill now felt the call back to the career world, into teaching, and for this she had taken up and she had completed studying her honours degree. But if God had other designs for her life, she was not open to these other designs. It was career first for her, and that was the priority. Now, Father Paul Marx, he was the founder, in fact, of Human Life International, and he used to lament this fact, as he saw it, the contraceptive ideology, how it can sometimes dovetail into the abortion ideology so easily. The one bleeds over into the other. And here, perhaps is an example. Now, one morning after Jill, she just celebrated her 41st birthday very recently. She was feeling a little bit unwell. So she was searching for some cause to see what the problem could have come from. She came up with nothing. So she just told herself, this is going to pass. And so it did. However, following morning, exactly the same feeling of being unwell. And so it continued for a few more days. And then the big question came to her mind. So secretly, Jill decided she was going to take a pregnancy test. And you guessed it, the dark blue lines, dark blue cross left her absolutely stunned. She told her husband Frank, and on hearing this, he was equally stunned. But how? They'd taken care of everything. And perhaps she realized it was the course of antibiotics she'd taken recently. Good grief, Frank said, I never saw this one coming. Yes, Jill was 41 years old, and she was pregnant. Well, we'll manage, Frank encouraged her. But he was not ready for what was to follow. But I don't want another baby, Gillian said. I am done with all of that. And she literally heard herself screaming these words at her husband. In fact, it went further. She had already made all of the arrangements to terminate the little one in her womb. But still, she had her pride and her honor to look after. And she didn't want to be seen going to the public health system close by in case someone saw her going to that particular part of the hospital. She didn't want people asking these inconvenient questions. So she put this to the doctor, and he had all the answers. Without even hesitating, he offered her the anonymity of a private AMAC clinic in New Zealand, in Auckland. And he even had the pricing, he had everything at his fingertips. It was so slick, he sold the idea to her just like that. And unfortunately for the little baby, she'd never be able to ask this doctor, heal me, because you took an oath, doctor. So Frank was obviously absolutely shocked and confused. And he said, but what about you being Catholic? He was visibly upset, also that he had no choice in this. And the days passed. A couple of weeks might have passed. And then the time came, and Gillian drove herself up to Auckland. She'd arrived a little early, and so she was now waiting in the car parked across the road from this clinic. She was an hour early, in fact. The facility had made it very easy for her to find. There were pictures on the website, a busy road, close to the highway, easy exit from the highway. Everything was very slickly set up. And she was there an hour early before her appointment. The young one, of course, in her womb had 1 hour to live. And so we can see a miracle was needed. Now, Gillian was restless, and so she looked around for something to distract her attention. But she tells us that for some reason, her sister Jane just kept on popping up in her head. She couldn't understand why. Then one of her sister's silly rhymes came into her head. When the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. And so Gillian even recalled how when she was in matric, all of that exam stress and everything, sure enough, her sister had invited her out shopping to calm the stress. But this was now in her mind. In fact, Gillian's sister, Jane, had grown up as the rebel of the family, we could say. But after spending a year on her overseas experience, the roles now switched. They switched polarity. Jane arrived back with her fiancé, who was a good Catholic man, and they settled down to have 5 children, and they were living in Christchurch, ominously close to where the coming earthquake was. And so why did this idea of Jane just keep on popping up in Gillian's head? Right now, it was so inconvenient because all she wanted to think about was having the preborn removed. She didn't want to be thinking about her sister. It was too much. So Jill headed out. There was a little boutique shop right there below the abortion facility. And it was one of those beautiful little shops crammed with all sorts of interesting items of furniture, jewelry, giftware. But Gillian found herself just staring at these things completely blankly. And her mind was just wandering in endless circles. Her thoughts just kept running over what had been going on these last few weeks, of how the kids had been really struggling with this new atmosphere that had entered their house. It is as if they were sensing something was wrong. They asked her, "Is everything all right, Mom?" But their questions were evasively answered. She'll deal with all of that later, afterwards. And then beside her, Gillian heard this voice asking, "Beautiful, aren't they?" Someone trying to encourage her to buy the things. "Yes," she answered, and she moved on. She wanted to avoid human contact. And as she moved forward, her eyes lowered slightly, and there were some very beautiful round tins there. And then it was as if her brain by itself just registered the words on one of the tins. "A lasting impression of your precious child" were written on this tin. And so this was all becoming just too much for her, and the tears started to well up, and Gillian, the emotions were too much. She left the shop. Outside on the pavement, there was another vendor selling his wares, little baskets and caned chairs. And she said her mind just seemed to act by itself without consulting her. Oh, that's a lovely basket, she said there. She reached over, picked it up, bought it to a very happy shop attendant. There was now just 1 minute to go before the appointment. And Gillian thought, well, I'm going to look silly going into the clinic with this little basket in my hand. I better go and drop it in the car. She headed back to the car park across the road, and it was then that Gillian realized that she was in fact not going to go to the clinic. I didn't know when I decided, but I had. She dropped her little basket in the car. Shortly after that, she headed to an eatery nearby. She ordered a coffee, a flat white coffee, and a mixed grill, and she realized that she was actually starving. And she picked up a little phone and sent a text message to Frank saying, I'll see you later. She put the phone down on the table. She had her meal, and in fact, she realized now that she was feeling so relaxed, far more relaxed than she had for the previous so many weeks. So it's as if something was now right with God. And then half an hour later, this thought came to her, well, I might as well go and, I'm in Auckland, I may as well go and buy some baby things. And she got in her car and she switched on the music. It was one of those old CD shuttle systems. So you get 5 CDs in a rack, randomly pick a CD, and randomly pick a song on the CD. And the one that popped up was ABBA's song, Mamma Mia, Here I Go Again. And how can I resist you, Mamma Mia? And at this, Gillian was absolutely undone. She was convinced, and she proceeded on her little shopping expedition. And so what had in fact happened here? What had brought about this sudden change in Gillian? Her thoughts of her sister kept on popping up in her head. All of these strange coincidences. What was the source of all of this? And you're going to see there's a spiritual origin. In part 2, Gillian, now she arrived at home. She was driving up the driveway and her husband Frank came running out, rushing over to her. He was clearly very distressed about something. Hi honey, he said, it's all right, she's all right, they're all right. I've been trying to phone you, you didn't answer. And Gillian realized, well, where's my phone? Looked down at her handbag, she saw it wasn't there, and then she remembered. She had this flashback, oh, she had sent that message. She must have left it in the restaurant. That's what happened. But in fact, what was Frank going on all about? Why are you home early, he said. Change of plan, Gillian said. But didn't you hear about the big quake in Christchurch? The big earthquake that hit Christchurch CBD, flattening the building where your sister works. But she's okay, Frank said. And then his thoughts catching up. Did you? The words petered out. No, I'm having the baby, I heard myself saying, was Gillian's response. And this look of absolute relief spread over Frank's face and a wide smile. Well, you'd better phone Jane. She's phoned twice today already. Once just after you left, and then also just after the quake. And then he turned to his daughter Shirley and said, let's give your mom a moment of peace. So Gillian phoned her sister Jane, and this is what she learned firsthand. This is what had happened to Jane. Jane had awoken at 3 a.m. that morning with this very disturbing dream that apparently involved me, that is Gillian. And it left Jane with this feeling of absolutely dread. This feeling did not leave. So she took a rosary and she prayed her rosary. And after that she slumbered on restlessly until 5 a.m. As soon as she could at 7 a.m., 7:30, she phoned to speak to Jill, got through to Frank, who told her that I'd gone to Auckland and would be away a few days. But Jane's fears weren't allayed because Frank was somehow deliberately evasive. He was different, deliberately vague. And so all morning she kept on thinking about these things, worried. And she kept on praying. And finally, it was too much. She could stand it no more. And she got up and she went out to midday mass just a few blocks away. Afterwards, after mass, Jane sat down in front of the tabernacle there, and it was then that this feeling of peace just returned for the very first time that day. And so it was that when the earthquake struck, Jane was in the church and not in the office. Because if she was, that entire office block was completely flattened. And in absolute disbelief at hearing the story, they both wept together over the phone. And so 2 lives were saved that day. Obviously, Jane's life and the baby's life. But if we take the counsel of Padre Pio seriously, then it was 3 lives that were saved. Because he said abortion is also the spiritual suicide of the mother. So how great is our God, our Father, to have given all of these graces. And His mercy just has no limits. And so it is that today, with such a powerful mix of emotions, there are these deep pangs and overwhelming relief and joy and another jolt of pain, that Gillian is able to gaze upon her so lovingly, upon her 8-month-old baby, Mia, obviously named after the song Mamma Mia. So we encourage you, do join our apostolate, and you can do this by subscribing to our channel. Click that reminder bell once you've subscribed.